remember when I was about 8 years old, back in 2006. I was just a girl.
I remember when I was about 11 years old back in 2006. I was just a boy.
I used to wonder what kind of a world we'd be living in 60 years' time.
The grown-ups were talking more and more about the oil running out.
They made it sound really scary.
And at school, we learnt about this thing called global warming.
But back then, I didn't know really what they were on about.
I just heard the word transition and immediately a light bulb went off in my head. The power of the transition movement is already in its name.
The great thing about the transition movement is it's so positive, it's doing positive things.
It's a grassroots thing. It's something that you and I can get involved with.
It's very much focused on your own place and ground and where you are, and this is where you need to take care of and build relationships and sort the world out from.
It's about not waiting for anybody else to fix things for us. It's about getting on with things ourselves.
And it is actually addressing the issues that are going to increasingly come to dominate our world, which is namely energy and resource depletion and global warming.
It's not that we're about to run out of oil and gas, but every oil well, every gas well reaches a maximum rate of production and then begins to decline. Whole countries max out and decline. You know, fossil fuels have been an enormous economic boon, but they've created all sorts of problems, including climate change, dependence on foreign sources, oil wars, pollution of water and from fertilizer runoff and petrochemicals, acid rain killing forests, on and on and on. If we can do this one thing, if we can reduce our consumption of fossil fuels and phase them out, we can solve all of those problems at the same time.
It started when I was working in Kinsale in Ireland at the Further Education College there, and we started looking around for, there must be places who are using permaculture principles and sustainability thinking and systems thinking to work out how cities and towns and communities are going to get through peak oil successfully. And we couldn't find any, so we just improvised and did a 20-year plan for the town of Kinsale based on the idea that where we got to at the end could be better than where we start from now. So then when I moved to Totnes the following year, it felt really vital to try and do something to deepen that idea and see how far we could take it. And that was what led to the setting up of Transition Town Totnes.
Welcome, Rob. Welcome to you all. He said he was gobsmacked when he saw you all. I'm not. marvellous, isn't it? You can make a difference, and I know that you will.
It's called the transition movement. It's about transitioning out of your current lifestyle to help the local economy and protecting the environment along the way. CBS 4's Molly Hughes looks at this growing trend.
You may be making small steps into transition and not even know it. It can begin with simple changes like switching to energy-efficient light bulbs, recycling more, turning down the thermostat a few degrees, composting, eliminating plastic, using reusable grocery bags, and taking the bus when possible. The transition movement has a place for everyone.
This is the first unleashing of a city, of a major city.
Yeah, it was fantastic. 1st of October we had 400 odd people arrive in the biggest hall we could find in Norwich. We had people working in small groups at that unleashing on particular themes that have now started out as theme groups. So we were very pleased because it drew in a very wide range of people. It drew in people who were involved in existing groups, and it drew in new people. So it did everything we wanted it to do, really.
Garden Shed project means that people who don't have land and don't have any garden space are matched together with people who have garden space that they don't use in Totnes. And the idea is for it to be a long-term growing community relationship and commitment, really helping us kind of get back more into the habit of sharing and sharing our space and sharing our resources and learning that we are utterly interdependent.
So I've moved your leeks that were here. Good. They're there now.
That so few people have access to land. That's a really obvious kind of background thing. I think also people are a bit more aware of the food resilience issues, the fact that, you know, it's common knowledge now that we have between 3 and 5 days worth of food in the supermarkets. I think also food prices have been going up, so people are really interested in growing their own food, and they can really easily grow their own salads. There's no packaging, there's no food miles. I think, you know, people have started thinking more about those kind of issues and eating in season and things. And then there's been this massive kind of media uptake of the project, and the BBC wanting to come and film it, and Hugh Fearnley-Whittingstall.
For over a year now, Transition Town's Totnes has been busy matchmaking gardeners and land, and now have around 20 successful pairings.
And if this was extrapolated to a national level, I mean, there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of acres of land out there. That, yes. I mean, there's plenty to go round, yes. Really.
It seems a very small beginning, but it will grow.
Yeah.
And the impact of it and the importance of it, I don't think, can be exaggerated.
It has been amazing to have so much media attention on it, because the idea has spread far and wide, and I must have been contacted by about 20 to 30 different projects from around the country.
I've also been talking to various groups and land experts about how we can get more and more people all across the country doing exactly the same thing. And now, inspired by the Totnes story, we've come up with the idea of a national network, Landshare.
When I first started it, I thought, well, you know, maybe it will be a success if there's 3 gardeners, you know. And actually looking at it now, there's over 50 families involved. A lot of it is about people wanting those links with the land again, and wanting to kind of learn and be part of that fantastic tradition that is propagating and seed saving and having their hands in the soil, and really kind of you know, learning what it is that makes us live, that makes us thrive, and it's particularly people who are living in flats who don't have any access to green space. It's absolutely lovely to be able to know that there's a little patch of land where you could just go and sit and be surrounded by your flowers and vegetables and watching the butterflies go by.
We're planting apple trees, which has a long history in this area. You'll struggle to find a local apple, that's for sure. I know the local deli sells them sometimes. Somebody brings in a basket of apples and they go just like that because people want them. 100 years ago there were over 100 orchards in the area around Llandilo, and now there's probably about 7, so we've got a lot of catching up to do.
The gardens here will now become a part of the curriculum and the outdoor learning environment, teaching the children about sustainability, about their future, and about the community and about involvement of everybody.
It's about getting involved in my community. It's about kind of putting my fear into something more positive. It's a way in, it's below the radar, it's not political, it's really practical project, it's not a talking shop, it's about getting people to do it. Transition has been really good because it's taking that fear and the need to withdraw and take care of your nearest and dearest and looking at your local community and thinking actually without them we wouldn't survive anyway, so let's get in there and do something with them, and you know, if we all pull together then something really useful might happen and there might be a future that's worth living for our children.
Before the transition, people were just trying to make ends meet, not change the world. But we had to do something.
People came up with all kinds of ways to make small changes.
Everyone had a part to play, something to give, something to contribute.
We didn't know if it would make a difference, but it didn't stop us trying.
We're not loaded, we're small businesses and struggling, yeah? It's something to help us as well as everyone else, isn't it?
The ultimate test will be when someone gets mugged for Lewis pounds.
And they don't just like chuck them in the gutter.
I can't wait to try and pay for my parking tickets with the Lewis pound. 3, 2, 1.
Well, the Lewis pound is a local currency, and so the idea is if you think of a community as being like a big leaky bucket and money pours into it from all different places, from grants, from pensions, from wages or whatever, comes into our economy, and then most of it just pours out of the holes in the bucket. Every time you shop in a supermarket, 80% of that money leaves. So you have a national currency which just pours through our communities. Whereas if you have a local currency, this is the Totnes pound, this is the currency that I've been involved in, it can't leave, it bounces off the side of the bucket. So it's never seen as something that's going to completely replace sterling, but it's seen as something that runs alongside it and as a complementary thing. So what it does is it's like mindful money. If you go shopping with a local currency, you make a conscious decision that you're going to support local businesses.
Our initial print run was 10,000 Lewis pounds, and they were sold out within 3 days of the launch. And the reason for that primarily was collectors. So this was the biggest currency launch in the UK in over 100 years. And within a day, Lewis pounds were trading on eBay. Within 2 days, they were selling for 30 quid a pound. You know, it was ridiculous. Wonder why I dream. Wonder why I stay away. Because it's not officially money. Okay, it hasn't got the Queen's head on it, and it is not a legal tender. In other words, there's no obligation for anyone to take it in. What it is, but don't tell this to anyone, it's a voucher. The idea behind the Lewis Pound is to strengthen the local economy and raise awareness about the importance of local trade and local supply. It helps support our local traders. It keeps them in business when everyone's going to Tesco's. The second thing is to reduce our carbon footprints because local suppliers tend to be sourced more locally, none of the flying around in jets all across the world. We have this silly situation where we end up buying beans from Kenya when we're perfectly able to grow beans here. There's an imbalance in trade between the global markets and the local markets, and we focus far too much on the global markets, which we need for a lot of things. We need them for healthcare, we need them for technology, we need them for industrial manufacture, all of those things. But we don't need them for a lot of other things. And if we just find the right balance between what can be done locally and what needs to be done globally, then I think we've got the basis for a local and global economy that can work together for the benefit of the planet and its people.
Yes, it was a little girl's dress, and all I did was change the top a bit and put a handle on.
We've been to the charity shops and we've brought with us a lot of items of clothing, and we've also bought fabrics from curtains and the kind of fabrics that people have lying around at home. And the aim is to show them the bags that we've made and encourage them to think creatively about what kind of bag they could make out of any of these materials. And it's a privilege to see a child learning a skill from another adult, not its parent. And I think that's all part of developing a sense of community. Obviously, making a few bags is not going to significantly change the carbon footprint of Newent. However, for me, there's something about refining some of the connections that perhaps we used to have in our more local communities. So all ages meeting together, and here we have that. And all ages communicating and responding to each other in ways that often in our very busy lives we don't have time to do. The central part of transition is recreating some of these connections. I think that builds a kind of emotional resilience, which as things change, and we know things are going to change in terms of the materials that we have available, in terms of transport, in terms of oil availability, these stresses and changes that are going to happen, we need to be resourceful in meeting them. And the great strength that we have is our relationships and our communities. And I think this bag workshop again shows how people can come together and be creative, and also, of course, get a tremendous amount of pleasure out of it. There's a lot of laughter as well.
I'm hoping that Rob will inspire the representatives who have come today to hear him speak to take up the mantle of transition towns as a project which all our market towns can adopt in unison with each other.
We're moving from a time where our consumption of fossil fuels, be it oil or gas, is the key factor in our economic success, our sense of well-being, our personal prowess, to a time when our dependency on fossil fuels is our degree of vulnerability. That's the key message, I think, for today.
The whole sense of a town being in transition from what it is today to what it could become tomorrow in terms of resilience is the thing that really captured my imagination and made it exciting for me.
This idea of resilience is really important. So resilience is the ability of a community or an individual or a settlement or a nation to withstand a shock from the outside. How do we design into our towns and settlements and cities the ability to to adapt and change quickly and to become much more responsive to what's happening around them. This is the town of... What we've really developed so far is the transition bit, which is the grassroots model, the bottom-up model. So it's fascinating to start really exploring what it looks like when a local authority starts to come the other way. And then really you start to move to what actually local democracy was always intended to be about, where the community's driving things, making decisions, having a vision, driving things forward, and the local authority's role is to facilitate and enable that. Actually, there is the potential in this to create something really quite extraordinary. And there is potential within addressing these issues for an economic, social and cultural renaissance, the likes of which we have never seen.
A council can sort of endorse something and then it goes from being alternative and hippie and slightly subversive to actually becoming mainstream, and I think that's our role, is to sort of say this isn't weird stuff, this is something which makes sense.
I think that the work that local authorities are doing, the work of the Transition Towns movement, all that work is incredibly important. It's incredibly important in itself because it makes people in local areas change the way they live, change their area for the better. But it is also important because it signs people up and gets them involved in a bigger idea.
It's an extraordinary time to be alive. It's the most exciting, terrifying time of great opportunity, and I feel that there are doors opening in the world, and that whatever we can imagine individually and as groups, as communities, whatever we dare to imagine, it is really possible now.
And now it's 2066.
I feel really proud to have been part of that.
We turned it around when most people thought we didn't have a chance. Lots of small changes, all coming together, all over the world.
That changed everything.
Can join a transition group, or if there's not one in your area, you can just start one.